this one?
Where's the AC/DC?
Yes.
Where's the AC/DC?
So, do you like a little echo there, Jane Brearley? Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome to the Form Guide. This is my sixth Form Guide, and I can't believe we put this on this year, and we're up to you're our sixth guest. That is the sixth piece of 80s music that we've played. So welcome. It is great to have you here. So, Jane, you are founder and CEO of Intent Health, an agency founded on diversity, inclusion, and representation. And I'm keen to hear more about that and a bit about your background. But let's start with you. And the question that we always start with at this part of the show is, how are you today? So I'll share first. I'm a 7 out of 10 on the Form score. I've been a consistent 8 for a few days, and I woke up with this kind of long COVID headache that just knocked me down a notch. So underlying form is pretty good, but I just got one of those headaches that I just can't shake, which is just affecting my mood a little bit. But delighted to be here with you. But what's your score today, Jane?
So I would say I'm rocking an 8 today. I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit nervous, but you and I know each other well. So this will be fine, and I'm just going to pretend that nobody's watching, so that's fine.
That's right. And what's driving that 8 for you?
Really amazing team, fantastic atmosphere that we've created in the team. I think the thing for me, and I know we'll talk about it later, but I've employed 15 people that I've never met face to face, right? And
Wow.
And it's really sad. And I think the excitement of building an agency is what's driving me forward, but my massive desire is for us all to get together and be in the same place and actually meet each other. It's mad. It's just mad.
It's the kind of the world that we're dealing with. I mean, I think, what do you think it will be like when you do get together with those 15 people? Do you think
there will be I will cry. There's no getting away from that. It will be massively emotional for me. We've built something that is incredible, but we are missing the human connection with each other, right? Certainly for me, there'll be tears all round, right? Which is fine. I'm a crier, and I just have to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be really, really emotive when we start re-entering the physical world and rebuilding those social connections for people that we're actually close to, but we've never met, and it's a bizarre time. I got out of the blue this week. I got a text inviting me for my first jab, for my first vaccine.
Amazing.
And I'm like, I wasn't expecting that for months. So I don't know whether it's because of my mental illness that I'm actually up the list. But so Saturday I'm going to get my jab, which feels really, really exciting.
Yeah, it is. That's amazing. Really good.
So 8 out of 10 being driven by kind of connections. Good afternoon, sort of John and Nesha on the chat. Great to see people tuning in on the live. What would be a perfect 10 day for you? And for me, the perfect 10 it's a bit of an ideal. The kind of stars need to be in alignment. Everything needs to be going your way, and it might happen once or twice in a lifetime. But what would be your perfect 10 day? What would cause you to go from an 8 to a 10?
That's a really hard question. I guess if my kids are watching, I should say a day with my bickering teenagers would be. But it's about family. It's about friends. But also for me, actually, a bit of a 10 out of 10 day is I used to take myself out for lunch on my birthday, just me and a book. And that's really nice. And just having some time that is just my time. So a combination of both. Maybe I'll go out for lunch and then I can have a drink with the family in the afternoon.
I love that. Take yourself out for your birthday.
It used to be Jane Day. Used to call it Jane Day. Used to go and sit, take a good book, have a glass of wine, have a nice meal, and not have to talk to anybody.
Fantastic. Well, I've got a birthday coming up. It's on the 5th of March. And I'm also, as you know, in putting on and hosting the Inside Out Awards. and later in March. And so I've decided on my birthday I'm going to throw a DJ party to test a little bit of the platform I'm using, what it's like to DJ on with guests, but to have a bit of a bash, like late Friday afternoon,
bit of a dance,
a bit of a boogie, and get going there. But I love that idea of taking yourself out for lunch. It's brilliant. Right, so we're going to get into the quick fire round, and this is nothing you can prepare for.
Okay.
If you've seen any of the shows before, you might have got an insight, but it's all around if mental health were a thing, what would it be? And I want to give you a few different things, right? So you just the first thing that comes into your head, or take your time. We've got Anna on the Anna Corving on the chat, by the way, wants to come to the birthday party. Absolutely. Lucy Allen, absolutely. I'll send out some links very soon. So first one on the quickfire round, Jane, if mental health were an animal, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know. What's coming into my head is a hedgehog. I don't know why. Because I think it's about, obviously, the prickly bit, but obviously there's the wanting to hibernate and sleep and, just hide.
I absolutely love that. The mental health hedgehog, the prickly bits on the outside, the kind of protective bit, but that kind of, caring for oneself and wrapping up warm in a hibernation. I love it. The mental health hedgehog. We've had some brilliant answers to this, by the way. We've had the mental health cockroach, because it's a very resilient creature. Can survive without a head. My one is the kind of the octopus, because it changes color to express its mood and is a very, very complicated animal. But I love the hedgehog. Very good. Very good. Okay, so if mental health were a color, what color comes to mind for you?
Oh, purple.
Purple. Why purple?
See, you can tell I'm going to do PR fluff now, because it's a combination of red and blue. There you go, Rob. I've been doing the PR a long time, my friend.
That's right. You're going to be great at this round. I understand. Combination of red and blue. Brilliant. There's a lot of love for the birthday bash and a lot of love for taking oneself out of for birthday lunch, by the way. So we're inspiring a few ideas there. Purple, yeah. So we've had kind of a few blues and a few yellows for the kind of the sunny day, but I like that. I like purple. So if mental health were a food, what would it be?
Something that, this sounds really weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. Something that's really bad for you, but you, in a perverse way, really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So stodgy, cakey thing.
Yeah. We're definitely getting comfort food for the answers to this. We've the one I've really liked is the burger. Because it's quite messy, but you get into it. It's delicious if you're a meat eater, or not, as the case may be. Okay, so if mental health were a song, what springs to mind for you? One song.
I don't know. Now we've talked about AC/DC, all I can think about is AC/DC, but that's more me coming out of my mental health.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely relevant. You can have sort of songs that bring you through your recovery and whatever. If it were an AC/DC song, which particular one?
For those about to rock, of course.
Yeah.
We salute you, my friend. My kids are going to be cringing their heads off anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of others. If mental health were a holiday destination, where would it be? What would it be?
Again, this is me being slightly a loner. Some very remote island in Scotland.
Yeah.
Where you can get outside and shout really loudly, or you can go inside and sit by the fire and just be at peace.
Yeah. Brilliant. So time to yourself, freedom to be whatever you need to be in that remote Scottish island. Yeah, I love it. Final one, difficult one. This, at least I think it's difficult. Everyone else seems to find it okay. If mental health were a sound, what sound would it be? I
have no idea.
Is that your final
answer? I'm massively triggered by really loud noises. They make me really anxious. So for me, even something as stupid as, we used to work next door to a pub, and when they used to come and tip out all the wine bottles to the recycling, that makes me jump. It makes me feel anxious. So for me, big noise is, and maybe that's why I want to go and live on a Scottish island in the peace and quiet, right? But
yeah, so that would be the sort of jarring sound that we might translate to kind of mental ill health or some of the challenges we might face. What about the kind of the more soothing or nourishing sound that we would want to hear?
So for me, that's running water.
Running water. Yeah, I was kind of thinking that as you were talking about that. You know, if we're in that Scottish Highland setting with a little stream and a beautiful view,
I'm there.
Yeah, I can.
Can we go now, Rob? Would that be all right?
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's do it from there. So we've seen some good form scores on the chat. Christopher at 8, John at 9, which is brilliant. I've noticed, because I do a lot of the form score polls in talks for organisations, and I've noticed as the last few days when I've been doing them, we've been seeing a tip up in the average. And I don't know what you feel, Jane, but it does feel like there's a level of optimism that wasn't there at the start of January.
Yeah, I think the vaccination program has made a massive difference. I know not everybody can get it as quickly as they would want to, but I think it's given us that light of hope. As a healthcare communicator, obviously I'm going to urge caution, and everybody shouldn't be having street parties, but it will make such a difference to everything, right? Yeah. I think that's why people are feeling slightly more optimistic, but I think this third lockdown has been really hard.
It's been tough, hasn't it? Tough, and we'll definitely talk about that. So thanks for the quick fire round. That was really good. I love your answers there, particularly the hedgehog. I can see a little graphic, the mental health hedgehog that my colleague Harar will start thinking about producing, I reckon. So we're going to talk about intent. We're going to talk about intent health. We're going to talk about your mission, your journey, a little bit around the purpose of organisations and the power of storytelling. But let's just start with you personally, because I think it's a lot. Sometimes we jump straight into work and what we're doing professionally and what our overall mission is. But we've connected around your personal story and your personal journey with mental health. Mm-hmm. Just talk us through that as much as you're happy and comfortable sharing, Jane.
Yeah, no, of course, and I am fine talking about it. Potentially not on live TV, but we'll see. I think lots of different things. I come from a very chaotic family. When I was 8 weeks pregnant with my third child, my partner died of a stroke. So within 2 hours, he was there and then he wasn't, which obviously was a massively shit thing to happen and really hard. I think after lots of therapy and reflection, my survival instinct that kicked in around that time in order to get through the day, hold down a job, bring up 3 kids with a brand new baby, 2 toddlers, blah, 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 has created some behaviors through necessity that has impacted my mental health in the workplace in later life. So, and this is a new revelation for me, but relatively new. I think if I'm under pressure, I go back to that survival instinct, which is just to get your head down and just do everything and get on with it, and don't take a breath, don't stop. And I think, people who've worked in agency life is brutal. It's claimed to be a client service industry and therefore it's brutal. Well, that's not actually true. And that's why I'm trying to create an agency that does things differently. But, a couple of agencies ago, I had my first ever panic attack. I was completely burnt out. I had to take a month off. Actually, in that month, I resigned because I couldn't see a way out of the pattern. And I think that is what happens to a lot of people when you're working in such a high-paced, high-pressured industry, particularly if you're chasing new business, working for clients. You don't stop and breathe. And I think, yes, I'm setting up my own agency. Yes, I'm working long hours, but I now have the self-awareness when I need to stop and when I need to take a breath. And I think by talking about it and being open about it. I know the way that I work, right? I do full on, and then I have to stop. And that's the way that my head works. That's the way. But now I know when to stop. And before I didn't know when to stop, and it nearly broke me. And it took me a good month of doing literally nothing to get my head back together and go back into the workplace.
Yeah, wow. I mean, thank you for sharing that. There's so much in there, and this is the second time I've heard you share your story, and it's just it feels incredible as to how you could have coped with that situation. And I'm so sorry for your loss. It must have been an immensely difficult thing to go through. And that get up and that just get up and go and think I've got to keep going because I guess you had to, right? I
didn't have a choice. Yeah,
you didn't have a choice, and then you've stored up the mental health challenge that will follow on from that because you haven't actually had the scope, the time, the ability to process it properly at that stage. And when obviously it started coming out in excuse me, in terms of a panic attack, and how did you sort of realize that you kind of needed to take a step back and needed to kind of focus on your self-care?
So I think if I'm brutally honest, that first time round, and I did take a month off, but I didn't associate that with mental health. I just thought I was exhausted. I think, when it bubbles up these days, I get incredibly anxious. I have issues. We've talked about loud noises. I have issues with train stations, which is totally irrational. But anyway, I do. And it got to the point about 2 years ago when it's out of control, and just going to work on the train was just too much. And so I've been doing CBT, which didn't massively work for me. I know it works for lots of other people. I've just started doing EDMR, which is amazing and life-changing from my perspective. But also this whole working with my coach, this whole piece around being aware of your body and being aware of your mind, and therefore knowing that, it's okay not to be okay, to steal the time for change phrase. But also it's actually okay to say, sorry guys, I can't do this client meeting today. I just can't. And to be able to say no, and to have that network of people around you that it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I've worked too hard this week. I'm going to bed this afternoon. And, obviously to all my clients out there, we will cover the workload. But, I do think that what has come out of COVID is we've all started to see each other as human beings more in the workplace specifically. And I think, I would hope that if my client's having a bad day, or if I'm having a bad day, that there is that level of understanding, and that understanding about people's mental health, that it doesn't make you weak to be having a bad day. It doesn't make you a bad leader. It doesn't make you a bad client. It just means that you're a human being, and, you are susceptible to ill health, whether that's physically or mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a book out there, I can't remember the name of the author, but Depression is the Curse of the Strong, I think is the title. Yeah. Actually we're not weak, those of us that suffer with a diagnosable mental illness, nor are the people that might experience a period of mental ill health because of the pandemic. Actually, sometimes people like you and I can push, and actually not take the recovery, and the strength is actually being able to say, no, I need the recovery. I need to go back to bed. I need that day off. And you're right. I think because the pandemic has forced all of us to think about our mental health in a new light, and we've all struggled a little bit depending on our situations, I think there is a greater level of empathy for those that struggle more regularly. And that's the big hope going forward, that translates into a kind of a little bit more human workplace and society and world where we all look out for each other a little bit more. Again, thank you for sharing it. It's really powerful stuff. And so talk me through that sort of journey to recovery. And I know recovery is an ongoing thing that we need to keep doing, and we don't always get it right.
No, I'm not there yet, mate. Yeah. I'm not there yet. But
talk me through that sort of journey as to the progress you are making and have made, and it, you've touched on some of it, but what does that look like for you?
I think it's I promise not to swear, so I won't. Historically, I'm dreadful at asking for help because I go into survival mode, and even when I had my kids on my own, you'd come around, the house would be immaculate, it would be homemade pasta, it would be all this, all that. No asking for help, no getting people to help me. So I think that's been a big part of this for me, is actually I do need some help. I can't fix myself. And then really, I guess talking, getting a network of people around me that I trust and, that support me. And I think one of the things that I think people don't necessarily get is sometimes you don't want an answer. I don't need you to find me a solution. I just need you to listen to what I've got to say. And I think people, because we're human, are always trying to fix things. And sometimes it's just that admission that actually, I don't think you can fix this, but can you just listen to what I'm saying in the moment? And, I think, as I've said, EDMR has been amazing for me, talking therapy, but also it's that self-care and being, intentional about self-care, which I'm learning, right? I'm not very good at self-care, but I'm getting better. Yeah. It's easy to hide behind setting up a business and being really busy, and but it's just, and one thing that's really worked for me, which I find hilariously bizarre, because I'm rubbish at mindfulness, I'm totally useless at it. My therapist is like, Jane, it's not a test. You can't fail at mindfulness. But we found this 3-minute mindfulness. So I will log on to a Zoom call 3 minutes early, do 3 minutes of mindfulness like 4 or 5 times a day. And it makes a massive difference. And for me, because it's only 3 minutes, I can deal with it and I don't feel fidgety and, because I think it's like going to the gym, isn't it? It's a big deal that you just say, I haven't got time for an hour. Everybody's got time for 3 minutes, right?
Yeah. Well, it's micro steps, and sometimes we think that the journey required is so big that we don't start at all. Whereas the benefit you get from even a minute of focusing on your breath before a Zoom call is immense. And I think mindfulness is interesting because you can get mindful moments in many different ways. You can get it from gardening. I get it from DJing. Yeah. I'm mindful when I'm spinning a few tunes on the decks and I'm not thinking about anything else. That's a really mindful moment for me. The other bit that has resonated both strongly with me and on the chat on the live is this idea of not being able to fix. We're not qualified to fix. That's what psychotherapists are for, and counsellors and mental health nurses. We're qualified to be human. We're qualified to listen. And you're right, that's kind of what we need. And very quickly, we try to often go to fixing people and thinking we can't fix people. And I often use the analogy of cancer, that if a friend phoned you up and said, unfortunately, I've been diagnosed with cancer, what you wouldn't do is worry about whether you could prescribe a course of chemotherapy or how to do it. You would say, that's really rubbish. Let me give you a hug or a virtual hug or whatever you can do these days. I'm here for you. Let's chat. So it's this, I think with our mental health, we've got to get away from the fact of being fearful or even trying to fix, because we can't do it. But what we can do is listen. We can be there.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So when we also first started talking, you knew about the Inside Out Leaderboard, where we publish a list of role models who are open about their challenges of mental ill health. You said, I'm keen to be on that list, and which you will be for the coming year. So my gratitude for that, and thank you for doing so. What motivated that for you, Jane, and why do you think it's important for our leaders when it feels right for them to be more open about their challenges of mental ill health?
I think it's massively important, and I have probably been talking openly about my mental health for maybe the last 4 years. Always, Time for Change Day, I'd be up on the platform talking about all this stuff, because I think it normalizes the conversation. It also shows vulnerability in leadership, and this whole thing about leaders have to be strong and can't be human is bullshit. And potentially enables other people to talk about their mental health. And I think it's really important, and you're completely with me on this, that some people don't want to talk about this stuff, and that's absolutely fine.
Yep.
And your bit around, I think the thing that I learned the most about being open about my own mental health was people would come to me and talk to me about their mental health, and I'm a qualified mental health first aider, but I'm not qualified to do anything other than listen and signpost to people that can actually help. But the fact that they felt comfortable talking to me about it is a brilliant step. But I think, my learning around that is that it's incredibly emotionally draining to have lots of people come to you and want to talk about things that are really deep and important to them and very impactful. And I have to learn how to not take that emotional baggage to me. And I think even that conversation out loud is really important, because if you've got a friend who's in trouble or somebody at work who's in trouble, you don't have to carry their baggage for them. It's that you need to be there and listen and know when you need to take action if it's obviously a serious situation. But it's not your job to take on their mental ill health, right? It really isn't. And that it can, when I first started doing this, I found it incredibly emotionally draining, really, really hard, because I was the only person in the business talking about it in a business of 200 people. So
yeah, and again, every time you say something, there's about 3 different things that I want to pick up on, which is brilliant. But for me, it does happen, and I think we need to call that out. Is that because of the stigma and because people are so repressed about mental ill health, and for years have felt we can't talk about it, when someone does share their story, then it opens up the floodgates, because immediately you've created a safe space. That's the safe spaces we talk about. So whenever I share my story to a group, I will get a number of people sharing back, or feeling they can talk about their challenges. And I think it's a real privileged position to be in. But I also recognise the boundaries of what I'm qualified to talk about.
Yep.
And I see it as my job to inspire people to go and seek help from professionals when required. But I also think that I talk to a lot of fellow campaigners who get something called kind of storytelling fatigue, where you're telling your story and that sort of the elation of telling it and then the reaction. And I think it's really important that when we have people in organizations who are sharing their stories of mental ill health, that they're in a good place when they do it, and they're properly supported through that process, which is something I'm quite mindful about of when we publish the leaderboard, is making sure that people are in that good space. Yeah. It's important, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's lots of parallels with talking about racial inequality, disability. It is, to tell your personal story out loud is hard, right? I think you and I have done it so many times that we're probably slightly I don't know what the word is. I don't know. We're used to it, but it still makes me feel emotional. I feel emotional about it now, and that is, and I know, because I know myself these days, is that I will have to go and do something in the garden for an hour after this just to, decompress. Yeah. And that's fine, because I know that now. Yeah. I know that if I've done a big client pitch, I need time to decompress. Otherwise my anxiety will take over.
Yeah. And you touched on identity, and we've had the wonderful Shireen Daniels on this show as well. And I think there's a big bit around when we can come out and be open about our challenges. For me, I see that the power of those mental illnesses is slightly diminished, because we're also then not pretending to be something we're not. Have you noticed that since you've been more open in the last few years?
Yeah, Absolutely. You know, and even silly, it's not silly for me, but, you know, small things like if we're going to a client meeting and we have to get on a train, my team, not my new team, because we've never been on a train together, but my team know that I need to hang on to somebody because I'm anxious. And rather than pretending, if I'm open about it, they know that that's what's happening, right? And they know that I will never go on a tube to a meeting. It's never going to happen. Yeah. And it's just those things become, if they're out in the open, then I'm not having to pretend that I'm fine when I'm not. I'm not getting to a client meeting in a complete state because I've been on the train and I haven't acknowledged the fact that it makes me nervous. It just makes it easier for me and makes them understand why I'm not acting in a weird way. I just you know, it makes me really anxious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, layering on a need or a perceived need to hide that is just going to kind of just amplify it, isn't it? So I think that's one of the benefits. I noticed that since I've been open, I get less episodes of depression, full stop. And you know, part of that is because I can be myself, which is what we want to do. So let's talk a bit about your business, your new business. And again, when we first started talking, and you were telling me that you were setting up this new PR agency focused on the healthcare sector with diversity, inclusion, equity at its heart. And you had this idea of setting up this accountability council where you've got me from a mental health and wellbeing perspective. You've got a number of people from the sort of LGBT and the you know, kind of anti-racism movement, Shireen, we mentioned, to advise you and to hold you literally to account on setting up this business. And I found that absolutely fascinating, pretty groundbreaking, and really commendable. Talk us through this idea to do that, because setting up a business in a pandemic is tough enough anyway. And you know, you've got a really admirable mission that obviously is pretty tough to implement. So to talk us through that, Jane, it's really fascinating.
So I think, you know, the kind of the journey, or I hate the word journey, but the story or whatever. I've been in healthcare comms agency side for 25 years this year, which is quite a long time actually. Always agency, always healthcare, fell into it because I love it. Came out of my last agency in June and was, I guess, a bit jaded, a bit cynical, a bit tired. You know, I find it incredible that in 2020, the PR industry was still 92% white, still 40% privately educated people. And how can we create campaigns that reach, if you're trying to not particularly in health, it doesn't matter whether it's health or toilet rolls, right? How can you create campaigns that need to reach a multicultural society if the people that are creating them are 92% white? It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I really, maybe I'm getting old. I wanted to create an agency with a social purpose. That's really important to me. I could have built an agency in 5 minutes with people that I already know, but that's kind of not the point. The point is, and the social purpose of Intent Health is to build a team that is truly diverse in all aspects of diversity, because we will then be able to create campaigns that resonate with a multicultural society. And that's the kind of the business model. The social purpose side of it is all about, I would say, opening the doors wider to enable more people to access the industry than do so now, and are able to now because of unconscious bias or just bias, or they didn't go to the right university, or they haven't got a degree, or, you know, whatever. So working really, really hard to think about, how do I find this raw talent? How do I make a space where we can develop that talent? So working from a recruitment perspective, working with the Taylor Bennett Foundation, who are amazing, working with Genius Within, who helps people who are neurodivergent get into jobs, working with Even Break with Jane Hatton, who is also phenomenal, which is an organisation that helps people with disabilities get into the workplace. Really trying to take away those barriers to recruitment or to getting into the industry so that I can harness raw talent and create amazing work for my clients. And I think, I get actively cross when people tell me there's no pipeline of talent, there's no diverse talent out there. I set this business up in October. There are now 15 of us. Over 60% of us are ethnically diverse. Over 50% of us have got a visible or invisible disability, and I include mental health in that. We have fantastic representation from the LGBTQ plus community. It just takes a bit more of effort, but I can guarantee you 100,000,000% the conversations that we have as a team and the ideas that we have and the pitches that we put together for clients are so much richer and so much stronger because we all have different life experiences, and that's really, really important. Now, when I set this up, the most dangerous thing in all of this is to assume stuff. I am not black, I'm not gay or whatever. I do not know, and I would never be arrogant enough to assume what different types of people need as employees. And that's the reason why we have the Accountability Council, because I need people around me who are not paid to tell me what a great job I'm doing, but are there to say, actually, Jane, you could be doing this better. This should be different. This is what, and they're all there, Shireen, Rita, Jane, to hold me to account. And I take that very seriously, because I can't talk about equity and inclusion if I don't seek advice from the people from different communities. And that's the whole business model. And I have to reflect that in what I do. And I think, where we're going is really to think about, actually, it's not just young talent that's important. There are so many things in the PR industry that means that there's a drain of talent, whether that's around flexibility in terms of parenting, or whether it's ageism. Once I'm nearly 50, what am I supposed to go to a PR old people's home and drink gin? It's not a thing, right? I never could have set this business up before now, because I wouldn't have had the self-confidence and self-belief to do it. So really, my vision is that we set up some kind of social enterprise that sits alongside Intent Health, but that is there to find raw talent, whether that's returnships or apprenticeships or whatever you want to call them. And we spend time with my senior team training that talent, and yes, bringing some of that into my business, but really releasing that talent out into the world of PR and comms, because you can't change. I don't want to say I'm changing the world, but you can't change the status quo if you just do it for yourself and for my business. This has to be bigger than that. It has to be about, if I can train, say, 10 people within my business, why can't I set up a social enterprise, and it's not set up yet, it's on my list, that trains 40 people a year, and 10 of those then come to me or go to wherever, and I think that's how you're going to improve diversity in this industry, is by actually doing something different and not just sitting in the corner moaning that there is no diverse pipeline, because it's just not true.
Yeah, wow, right. Again, which strand do I pick now, Jane? It's brilliant. So first of all, I'd like to just say congratulations on what you've achieved in such a short amount of time, and the mix of individuals, of people, of humans that you've put together there in that time, by, as you say, just making some effort. And I think, it feels a bit like a daunting task, but you've started with a blank sheet of paper, you've started with some advisors, and you've gone and done it, and you've shown it can be done, and you will show that it can be continued to be done. And I'm really interested in exploring a little bit the the point around the different ideas that are now being brought to the table on projects, because we've got a much more diverse set of workers, set of colleagues. Can you give us an example of something like that you've just noticed? Actually, the fact that we have got such a different set of people in this business have come up with this particular idea. I'm really keen to just hear an example of it, if one can come to mind.
I think there's two different strands to this, right? One is lived in experience, and by pure utter coincidence, we've won a client in a disease area that two of my people in the team have personal experience of. That wasn't planned, it wasn't staged, it's just happened. However, the insights that we have now been able to get into that disease area and a specific ethnic community have been so rich because they've lived with it, they've been near it, they know how it feels, which meant that we won a piece of work without a pitch because we just blew them away. The other thing for me is really actually about helping clients think about accessibility in a different way. So again, by complete coincidence and no staging, I have a lot of people who are neurodivergent on my team. And it's very, sadly, refreshing for clients for us to say, actually, the way that you've written this or the way that this looks is really inaccessible. We have somebody on the team who is hard of hearing. And again, similar, clients aren't thinking in that way because their agencies aren't thinking in that way. Now, there's a massive argument that says that clients should be pushing for agencies to be more diverse and all of that stuff, which I completely agree with. But it is astonishing to me that these conversations are not being had. And even at the basis level of PR, in my previous life, when did I ever go to a client with a media list that included disability media or ethnically diverse media like Black Ballad or, Galdem or Gay Times or whatever? You're just missing. You're missing a trick for a start, right? Yeah. But you're just missing a whole. Not everybody, shock horror, reads the Daily Mail or the FT, right? It's so there's tiny little things that have a massive practical impact, but actually the richness of the conversations in the team are incredible. And because some of them haven't come from an agency background, they're not tainted with we've always done it like this, so let's just recycle that pitch that we didn't win and sell it to somebody else, which is not unheard of in my industry.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of love coming through for your approach on the chat, and your friend Andy Brown has tuned in and will be sharing this approach with the inclusion group at Anglian Water. So it's been well received by me primarily as well. I get I get the vision. I'm so bought into the vision, and I get the benefits. What about the challenges you faced in the last few months in implementing that vision? What have been the most difficult things that you've had to overcome?
So I think the biggest challenge for us, and I think this is indicative of the world we live in, I guess, is because I bang on about diversity, inclusion, representation. People take the assumption that we are a D&I consultancy, and we're not. We're a communications agency that wants to reach a multicultural society. But I think the fact that we're being pigeonholed is indicative of people who think that only D&I specialists should be talking about representation and inclusion, right? Which kind of speaks for itself, and there's the reason why we exist in the first place. So I think that's the other big thing for me is I've hired 15 people that I've never met face to face. That's just tough. It's tough to onboard people. It's tough to, we've done the best job that we can, but, I've got people, this is their first ever job. They've not been in an office before, and they can't obviously be in office at the moment. That whole inspiring people by being with them and having that collective energy is missing. And I think when we do all come together, it's good for me. It's going to be incredibly emotional, because this is the realization of something that, you know, I've built, and it still feels slightly abstract because we haven't all come together. You know, I'm still in my little shepherd's hut by myself, even though I have 15 employees. So, you know, that for me is the toughest bit, most definitely.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, isn't it? I had a conversation with someone I would count as a friend and a really good contact in what we do, a chap called Jack Green, and we did this whole series of recordings in the wellbeing space. And towards the end of it, Jack pointed out to me that we'd never met, and I didn't believe him. I'm like, we've never met in person, and yet we are forging these relationships in over Zoom and over calls, and it's. I think it's going to be really overwhelming, as we were discussing at the start, when we actually start seeing these people that we've actually built a really good relationship with, and yet we've never physically given them a hug, right?
Yeah, and just we were on team drinks the other night, and a couple of weeks ago, and we were like, oh my God, you know, I don't even know how tall you are. And I was like, but you know what I mean? That physicality, and for the record, I'm pretty short. But you know, you don't get that. It's a bit like watching a soap opera and then bumping into the main character in Oxford Street, and they don't look anything like you thought they looked like, right? It's weird.
Yeah, absolutely. You've touched on this a little bit. I'm really interested in this point around, you know, how large corporates can be better where it comes to the inclusion agenda, and it clearly is on the agenda for many businesses, rightly so. You've obviously started from the ground up, and you're achieving your vision, and you know there's a long way to go, I'm sure. How can large corporates do better in on this agenda, based on you know what you've experienced in starting from scratch? And I think, you know, for me, there's a connected bit around this, which is, you know, around actually, if we can create environments where people can be themselves, as we were discussing, we can then create environments that are mentally healthier and people feel, feel like they belong, and that will impact their mental well-being. So, how can corporates be better from where they're at, and you know the challenges of this is the way we've always done it?
Yeah, and I think, in all honesty, it's so much easier to start from scratch. Because I can build this in the way that I want to build it. I think and a lot of this is Shireen's territory, and it's, you know, not my area but there's a lot of just, I would say, structural approaches. The way, if we think about this from a mental health perspective and not necessarily from a kind of race and sexuality perspective, you can have as many policies as you want, but if people are too scared to take you up on them, or too scared to have a conversation with their line manager because they think they'll be penalized, you know, for me, certainly, and this is personal, it's all about the strength of your line manager, right? And how they take a coaching approach, how you feel you're able to talk to them. Yes, I think it's really important that the senior leadership team are open as much as they want to be about mental health, but also there has to be an action. It can't just be a policy. Go and see page 7 of the handbook. That's our mental health policy. Actually, you know, this month, I can't remember now, this month I said to everybody, take the day off. Take a paid day off. It's compulsory. I'm taking the day off. We've all worked our socks off. You know, have some time away from your laptop. Just take the day off. And I'm paying you to go outside or do whatever it is that you need to do. And I think, you know, if I acknowledge that it's important to me, then it makes other people, it gives people permission, right, to do, but it has to flow. You know, it's easy for me. Well, easier. There's only 15 of us, right? If there was 15,000 of us, then that's when you become reliant on the line manager culture and the coaching, which is embedded, and then what I think is being driven, because that's where it falls down, right? I can stand at the top, sprout all this stuff off, believe in all of this stuff, but if my team leaders either don't believe in it or don't think it's a real thing or don't know how to implement it, then it's not going to work. Yeah. And I think that's when big corporations find it really tricky.
Yeah, I think that's right. And again, a few things in there. The blockers are often at the line manager level. There's a comment on the chat there from Pavlina around psychological safety, so people can feel they've got the confidence, and leaders can create that permission. But we do have to, in large organizations, break down any blockers at the line manager level with training and culture shifts. I love the idea of closing the office. I've seen big corporates do that as well and give time off where everyone feels confident that, look, the office is closed, we'll get the work done around it, but we're going to have a break for our well-being. And I think messages and gestures like that are really super important. And I think that the more and more leaders that get behind this, the more then we can influence that structure of the organization. But you're right, I think sometimes it can be blocked at the line manager level. So it is 12:51. I can't believe it. 51 minutes have expired since we've first put on. It feels like 5 minutes to me.
No, I know.
And I'm starting to understand why people like kind of Rich Rolls do the long form podcast of 90 minutes, because I could chat to you for 90 minutes. But one final question for you, really, in terms of the communications industry has a role to play in how society changes, but specifically on mental health and creating mentally healthier workplaces and societies. What do you think the role of the comms agencies are and the comms industry is in that?
Oh, okay. I think as an industry versus as an employer, I think as an industry, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff about acknowledging that mental health is as important as physical health. There's a lot of stuff around when you're working for clients is about trying to create, we're all about creating authentic communications campaigns. I think, a lot of campaigns that are out there are trying really hard to be inspirational, but actually make people feel worse because they haven't climbed up Mount Everest or done whatever they've done. I think it's about normalizing the conversation. It's about, supporting some of the great charity work that's out there, and encouraging your clients to, join the leaderboard, talk about, when did you ever see a CEO? There are some, I know that stand up in a town hall meeting and say, it's not been a great week, but, with the energy in this room, I feel better, blah, blah, which is what you're all about, right, Rob? It's about, really feeling protected, as somebody said on the chat, enough that you can say, actually, I'm a bit of a 6, because, or I don't know why I'm a bit of a 6, I just am today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the good thing is we are seeing more leaders behave that way and saying, I don't have all the answers, it's tough for me to, but here's what we're doing about it, and collectively let's get each other's backs, right? So we'll see more than that. I'm hopeful for that. So we'll put a link in the show notes for how people can find you, but what's the website address if people want to Google you?
Of course, it's www.intenthealth.co.uk. And my last plug, we've got an amazing piece written by a fantastic girl on our team coming out on LinkedIn this afternoon around medical racism and vaccine hesitancy. So go give that a read because it'll be good.
Wow. So make sure you tag us in and we'll share that for you as well. So keen to have a look at that. Jane Burley, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your time, but also for all you're doing in leading the way to create a truly inclusive and representative workforce and work culture. So brilliant. Next week, we've got Catherine Switz, who is CEO of the Stability Network in the US, which we've an organization we've partnered with, a charity, And they're all about using storytelling and advocacy to further the mental health agenda. The Inside Out Leaderboard will be inviting our members to join the Stability Network. So we're going to hear all about that. Thanks for everyone tuning in on the live. It's been great. This is the Form Guide, inspiring conversations about our well-being and our form. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Rob. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.